Hey, what's going on, guys? Today I want to talk about in terms of using trend lines. A few things that I want to really discuss uh, in terms of using trend lines. Um, so, what do you want to really talk about? Just put it on here. So, number one thing I want to talk about in terms of what trend lines are, right? Um, in terms of what trend lines are, is usually trying to identify a trend. I'll try to show you when to use it, when not to use it. And in terms of how can you actually trade from trend lines, right? So two other things that I would really want to discuss is what trend lines are and how you can trade from the trend lines. So let's get to it. And by the way, guys, if you do like the video, please like and subscribe. It's going to keep me motivated to make more videos for you guys, something that we can actually learn from. Now, in terms of trend lines, what do you really want to see? I'm using a Thinkorswim platform over here. If you want to find trend lines, what you do is you go on drawings, you go on drawing tools, and you find a trend line, right? Now, you want to take a look at what time frame you're looking at. As the name suggests, it's a trend line. So trend line is going to help you identify trends, right? If something is moving sideways, it's not going to show you any trend whatsoever. For example, if we are looking at, say, in this region, right? You see all this stock um, up and down. There's really no trend in this time frame. So you want to take a look at what time frame you're looking at and try to establish if there's a trend in that time frame. It could be that you're looking at a daily chart. There is no. Just do anything simple. Just to look at spice, right? So if you look at spiders on here, on the daily chart, you see, uh, you go from left to right. The trend, you would think that this trend is up, right? That's pretty easy to say. The next thing you will see on here is the trend is down, right? So on the daily time frame, you're seeing two conflicting signals on here, right? There is within this time frame of daily chart, right? So you're seeing two conflicting signals. Now, if you want to take a look at, hey, 1 week out, if you want to take a look at weekly, where are we sitting on the weekly? So on the weekly, we are actually, if you take a look at it, we are actually, we just broke this long-term, just remove this drawing. So on the weekly, if you look from left to right, we were on an uptrend, right? However, now that we have broken into the trend line and now this trend is actually acting as a resistance over here, right? So it's pretty easy to take a look at what's going on. So we are really, the trend lines you have to take a look at in relation to what which time frame you're looking at. In one time frame, it might look you have no bias, right? As I mentioned to you on here. Show you a bit longer than that. Where did this? Right. So I showed you in the bias, there's no trend, but if you look on the weekly one, there's actually a trend, right? So that's why, as I mentioned, on the weekly, things are a bit murkier right now because we did break below this trend line. Now, where are we going to go? We don't really know, right? As compared to if you were to go and look at, say, hey, last 10-day hourly chart, try to see where the trend is. If you take a look on the hourly chart on here, once again, you see there was some kind of trend over here, right? And then you see a downtrend. So once again, conflicting signals on the lower time frame. So whenever you see conflicting signals, you always want to go and go on a higher time frame and see what signals can you really get. All right, so that's one thing to look at. Now, in terms of understanding, how many touches it needs to have. So rule of thumb really is you need to have at least 2 touches. So think about it. Let me just remove this trend lines over here, right? So you'd really want to have at least 2 touches. Now, why will I say that we need at least 2 touches? Few reasons why, right? Just trying to see. If you want to establish a trend, right? A trend really is, you have an up move, you get a pullback, and then you get an up move, and then you get a pullback, right? And then you have an up move. So why I say we need at least two taps on is, I mean, once you have an established trend, which is you have a higher high, a higher low, a higher high, a higher low. So when you go and connect these lines, you can actually see a trend, right? So now you see there's an established trend over here, right? So what you have really confirmed that bias on here is not only you have higher highs and higher lows, but also, you know what, this stock is actually trending, right? So this is an easier stock for you to really trade. Let me just remove all this drawing. So this is one way that you can really do. I mean, the other way, this if the stock it really goes like this, right? Maybe it goes um, like this, becomes like this, and then goes like this. I mean, this is another kind of name you can actually trade, right? If you cannot really trade this name, there is no. I mean, sure, there is a trend on here. You know what? This is a long bias over here, but you know what? There's really no trade over here, right? One really good example, I'll show you in terms of charts as well, or what I really mean by what are tradable and what are not tradable. So I know the marijuana sector right now is pretty hot, right? There's a lot of inflow in the money on there, and let's see if we can try to find out, hey, you know what, is it tradable or not? So if you take a look at something like, you know what, a stock like CGC, right, which is Canopy Growth, right? On the daily chart, you know what, you go left to right, we are exactly where we are, right? So there is really no trend. Now, if you're trying to identify try to go a long bias and see if there is an opportunity for us to actually go long. Now, why I say that we need two touches, if we try to take a look on these, I mean, you cannot really draw two touches on here, right? Even if you take a look at something like TLRY, right? This one had some kind of definition on here in terms of the touches, right? So you see the stock start trending, right? I mean, even if you try to take a look at, you know what, this was the first move, came back the second move. So now you're seeing two taps, and now you know this stock is actually trending. And I mean, by the time it trended, the third one was a bit too aggressive on here, right? So that's one way you can take a look at it. Same thing if you want to take a look at, say, Apple stock, right? If you look on the weekly chart, if you try to draw trend lines over here, you'll see multiple taps, right? So you see there's an established trend that you can see underlying the top move. Now, if you try to use trend lines on something which is going sideways, right? This, if you take a look at Tesla, since what is this? June 2017, and now this stock is just going sideways, right? I mean, if you want to trade trend lines, you want to have a stock which is trending. If you try to go and trade a stock which is going sideways, you cannot really go and trade based on trend lines. I mean, this is going to get whipsawed, whether you're doing a downside or if you're trying to do an up one, right? You see two taps, but you know what? On the bigger time frame, is really tapping on here again and again. So no established trend on here, right? So you can't really trade with this. As compared to, let's say, if you take a look at NVIDIA, right? It got destroyed today. But if you look at NVIDIA, right, you see there's an established trend. There's multiple trends that you can see on different time frames, right? So you see one trend over here, you can see another trend over here. So two taps, you know what, there's an established trend. So these are easier to understand. The other way you want to use trend line really is if you really want to go and find what trade opportunities are there, right? So if you take a look at, once again, if you try to take a look at sideways, anything which is trading sideways, is really hard for you to really go and try to find a trend and try to trade off it, right? So if you want to trade in the direction of the trend, that's one way to do it. Or if you want to go and find, you know what are the, if you want to try to find where are the good reversal opportunities, right? If you take a look on this Shopify on the weekly chart, I mean, you see this thing tapping on, right? So anything which is taps twice, there's a higher likelihood of it bouncing, indicating that, you know what, there's an established trend, and this is actually a region of low risk as well. So if you look at this trend, you see, you know what, this trend is up. Now, other than the trend, what you're also seeing is this is also acting as a region of support, right? Because last few times it acted as resistance, this region, right? So this region was acting as a bit of resistance before. It broke through, it came back. Now this region is support. Now the idea really is where are we going to get in, right? So we want to get in, but we also want to take a look at is there an established trend? So we can identify, number one, there is an established trend over here. Number two, there is a region of support which you can buy off against, right? So once you see this tap on here, you see this nice up move, right? So this is one way to take a look at. Even if you take a look at something like AMD, right? Similar story. What you have seen on here, you know what, you have see established trend over here, and if you take a look at this region, which was acting as a bit of a resistance, right? This was acting as a resistance, and now it's formed a support. Now when you see this few taps on here, this is the second tap, and once you see this third tap on here on this trend, low risk entry on the trend line and on support. So you combine the two factors, you get really powerful moves on here, right? Even if you try to find something like, say, Amazon, right? So if you try to find a trend, you see multiple taps, one, two, right? And now you're trying to find, hey, you know what, where is the region of, what was the region of resistance, which is potentially can become support, right? So this region acting as resistance on here once, twice, right? And once it didn't really break down again, now it acts as a support, and then you see the up move, right? So there's lots of good buying opportunities on here. If you want to trade intraday, right? Let me just take a look on what are the names which, see if I can see what names are trending today. Axis. Yep. So if you look on this Facebook once again, right, it's been on the weekly front, nice taps on it, right? And in terms of finding regions of support, right? So nice trend, came back on here, and this was the region of support. And once it bounced off this region of support and the trend line combined, you see really powerful moves, right? Trying to show you it again. Google, once again, you know what? If we were somewhere this, so you can see multiple taps on here, one tap, right? Near tap. I mean, this one was really good. And once you see it came back to support levels, right? Support level plus a trend line combined, it gave you a really nice move to the upside, right? If you want to take a look at even, say, Netflix, right? So once again, we see an established trend, and you want to find region of resistance, which is now potentially can act as support, right? So you see this region acting over here. Once it came back, once again, the region which is acting as resistance is now acting as support, right? This region, and now once it comes back, and then you see a nice push on there. So those are pretty good ways to trade with the direction of the trend. Now, what if you want to trade a bias where the stock is actually trending down, and if you want to have reversal patterns, right? So the reversal pattern is the one that I just showed you in terms of the spies. If you try to do the trend line left to right, right? So once it breaks the trend line, retests are the best ones to actually trade. If you want to take a look at, say, something like AMD, let's remove this line. So this one I don't really like it that much. The reason being is the overall this trade was on the sideways and then it started breaking out, right? So there's one way you can try to use it like a slanting. I mean, the prior move was up, right? So if you try to trade flag patterns, right? Flag patterns, what really is the stock is going up, then it goes sideways, and then you want to trade in the direction of the trend. So that's really what you want to trend for cup and handle patterns or flag breakouts, right? So if you can see the established trend, the prior trend was the up, and now you're seeing a sideways consolidation. Any break of the sideways consolidation on the upside with it. So when you break the downtrend on the upside, that's when you see an upside move, right? Let me try to see if we can find other examples. So we're looking at Netflix, Twitter, right? Remove all this. So let me show you in terms of the Twitter. So do your daily chart. Just remove all these drawings and I'll show you, what's going on. So if you want to try to trade reversal patterns, right? Trying to say, can we potentially get a bounce, right? That's really the idea really is. Can you potentially get a bounce? So I mean, if you want to take a look at, if you know the prior trend was up, right? So if you take a look at the prior trend over here is up. Now what you're trying to find is either the stock goes sideways, right? That's one way to do it, or the stock actually starts trending downside, right? If the stock tries to go sideways, we showed you the AMD example. If the stock actually starts breaking the downward trend line, that's an opportunity for you to get long, right? Same theory on here. If you take a look on Twitter, where I mean, if you take a look at the bigger trend line is over here. Once it broke through the trend line on here, right, and it starts going up, right? So if you want to take a look at, so we always want to take a look at what is the bigger prior trend, right? So the bigger prior trend, you can identify on going on the weekly chart and see what's going on, right? So weekly, the prior trend is up, right? Now you have to break it down on the daily and see, can we find an opportunity to go against the direction of the trend, which is the shorter term trend is down, but the longer term trend on the up, right? So that's how you can use trend lines. So hopefully you guys like the video about how to using trend lines. So two things. Number one is you want to trade in the direction of the trend if you want to find long or short opportunities, right? You want to trade in the direction of the trend. The other one is if you want to go against the trend, you want to take a look at the only way you trade against the trend is if you want to trade the longer time frame. So longer time frame is high, shorter time frame is going downside. If you want to trade against the direction, the only one is you want to take a look at the longer time frame and take a look at the shorter time frame, and you can trade against that trend for profitability. Any questions? Hit me up, or if you do like the video, please like and subscribe. Makes me more motivated to make more video for you guys. Have a good one.